On the 11th of January 2019, at Winter Park Home in Florida, Danielle, a mother of two children, was eating her hamburger in the kitchen. A text message was sent to her phone, and her drunk husband, Michael Redlick, saw the text and noticed it was from another man. He suspected that his wife was cheating on him, and he got filled with so much anger. He went to where she was eating and grabbed her hamburger, bit it, and spit it at her. Michael then grabbed her, and she then fell on the ground. He then held her head down on the countertop, and he pushed his fist against her face. He was grinding his fist on her face. Danielle could not breathe, and she feared for her life. Using her free arm, she grabbed a knife from a drawer. She stabbed him one time in the shoulder area. This attack allowed Danielle to break free of Michael. She ran into the toilet closet of the bathroom and locked the door. Michael bled profusely until he died. Did Danielle Redlick stab her husband to death intentionally, or was it an act of self-defense? Join us as we unravel the death of Michael Redlick at the hands of his wife. Michael Redlick was born on 1st May 1953 in Ohio. He received a bachelor's degree in communications and a master's degree in sports administration from Ohio University. He also received a law degree from the Cleveland Marshall College of Law at Cleveland State University. He worked for several professional teams like the Cleveland Browns. Michael, who was single and childless at that time, met a woman known as Kathleen Aquino, who was a single mother of 5 children in the year 1990. Before meeting Michael, Kathleen and her ex-husband had separated. She was left to take care of 2 children, as her ex-husband went with 3 children. By the time Kathleen and Michael started their love relationship, Danielle, who was Kathleen's elder child, was already 22 years old, and she was living away at college. Danielle Justin Drohan was born on 3rd November 1976. She had an Art of Associate degree from Valencia College. In addition, she holds a Bachelor's of Science and Psychology from Baldwin Wallace University, a Bachelor's of Art in Interdisciplinary Studies with a minor in Mass Communication from UCF, and certification in Advanced Photography from Indiana University. Danielle would regularly visit her mother and her sister. After Kathleen had been in their love relationship for 2 years, the worst happened. Kathleen was diagnosed with breast cancer. With her humble background, Kathleen didn't have funds to pay for her own health care, so Michael decided to get married to her so that she could be entitled to his own health care benefits, which would cover all expenses related to treating Kathleen's cancer. Kathleen's breast cancer had progressed to stage 4. Despite trying all the available treatment, Kathleen was told she had only months to live. Unfortunately, she succumbed to cancer at the age of 46 years. Danielle's sister was in her final year in high school, and she was traumatized by her mother's death, so Michael and Danielle agreed that having Danielle close by would be of great help while she finishes her senior year. Danielle moved in, and she would help with domestic chores. She also provided emotional support to her sister and her stepfather, Michael Redlick, who in turn encouraged her and provided her with career guidance. Soon, Michael began to take Danielle with him to various activities and events. Initially, Danielle thought of it as father-daughter bonding, but Michael began buying for her gifts and spending more time with her. Their relationship changed from stepfather and daughter relationship to romantic and sexual relationship. During that time, Danielle was working as a part-time bartender while she studied. Michael would show up during her shift and order drinks, and they would chart while she serves other customers. Michael introduced Danielle to one of his business contacts, and that was when she secured her first professional job. She fell indebted to Michael. Michael and Danielle were in a romantic relationship, but given Michael was her stepfather, her friends and family would struggle to accept them as a couple. So initially, they decided not to make their relationship status public for fear of public criticism. Michael secured a position as the executive vice president of the NBA basketball team, the Memphis Grizzlies. He had to move from Cleveland to Memphis. He raised the issue of the move to Danielle and asked her to go with him. Unfortunately, she declined. Moving in with Danielle would mean that her family would find out about their 2-year-old romantic relationship, and she wasn't ready for that level of scrutiny. She, however, supported Michael moving and decided that instead of moving with him, she would just visit him frequently until she felt ready to go public with their relationship. When Michael moved to Memphis, he would fly Danielle every weekend to see him. Michael would take her on romantic dates. On one such visit, Michael drove Danielle to a beautiful home in the suburbs of Memphis and told her he had purchased the home for her. He wanted her to leave Cleveland and join him. Danielle later agreed to move in with him at Memphis. They formalized their relationship, and in the early 2000s, they got married. There was no hiding from possible criticisms of their friends and families. In 2003, Michael and Danielle welcomed their first child, a daughter named Jaden. 7 years later, they had their second child, a son named Sawyer. Everything was going on well. The family moved to California and Indiana, and they finally settled in Winter Park in Florida. Michael started facing challenges at work. The management changed, and he couldn't get the promotion he had hoped for. He became very stressed, up, and tired. Eventually, to relax and unwind, Michael turned to drinking alcohol. Over time, this became a daily occurrence. He would often stay out late, returning home intoxicated and angry. Danielle tried to support her husband, and she understood his condition. Michael began to drink more frequently, and conflicts in the house increased even over trivial matters. As years went by, love and patience seemed to be replaced. Conflicts and confrontations, often involving alcohol, became the order of the day. Her husband was overwhelmed with health issues, anger, and work pressure. From earlier on in their relationship, it was not uncommon for Michael to become angry and drink alcohol after a tough day at work. When that happened, he would assault Danielle. Michael's drinking habit escalated into physical aggression and bigotry. He would physically assault Danielle. However, Danielle didn't leave him. Despite her dissatisfaction with the situation and resentment towards her husband, she continued to love him deeply. Their 2 young children would be witnesses as they kicked and scratched each other. During one occasion, Michael physically assaulted his wife, and he injured her. He then took her to a familiar sports doctor and explained what had happened. The doctor examined Danielle and provided first aid to her, then recommended her to see a dentist and a plastic surgeon, as the injuries were quite severe. She even had her front tooth chipped. Undoubtedly, his wife forgave him and did not report the incident anywhere. During one of the arguments, he grabbed Danielle by her throat and he pinned her against the wall. His action really terrified her. Danielle couldn't tolerate his rough behaviors anymore. She packed up her belongings and picked up the children and moved to one of her relatives. Michael later apologized and they reunited. He started to take her on dates again and lavished her with gifts and expensive restaurant. Danielle later found out that her husband was cheating on her, and after confronting him, he admitted that he was having an affair. Danielle was devastated. From that point, Michael was in and out of the house as he picked needed items and picked up the kids. After learning of Michael's infidelity, she signed up on a dating site known as meetmindful.com, where she interacted with a man named Mark, where they exchanged text messages. The numerous disputes and assaults eventually led to the couples separating in 2016. Danielle decided that she had had enough of Michael's ongoing infidelity and endless fights. Michael was furious and began to turn against Danielle. He threatened that he would stop paying the bills on the home that they once shared, and he would cut her off from being able to access their joint accounts. He told her that he would go for full custody of the children and kick her out of the house that he was paying for and force her to return to Cleveland. Michael convinced Danielle that if she let him move in, he would continue to pay for everything. Despite this, Michael continued to see the children and support them financially and pay the bills. However, Michael again apologized for his actions and they reunited. Danielle reunited with her abusive and toxic husband so that she doesn't lose custody of her children. In early October 2016, Michael tried to run Danielle over with a car. She was saved only because she managed to jump into the bushes. At one point, Danielle began to suspect her husband of infidelity. He became unusually cold and distant and not interested in making love to her. However, Michael found the strength to confess that his age and health were to be blamed. He was embarrassed to mention this earlier on fearing he would lose his younger wife, but Danielle was grateful for his honesty and supported him as before. Michael was prescribed testosterone, a medication for erectile dysfunction. He had become frustrated and insecure about his poor performance in the bedroom, and he would verbalize his fears that Danielle would want to leave him because of these issues, and he became sexually aggressive. On the 26th of January 2018, Danielle went out with her two friends for a night of dinner and drinking. A verbal disagreement in the car escalated into a physical altercation among them. Danielle was arrested after allegedly being involved in altercation at Wawa gas station and assaulting police officers who responded. She was charged with battery, resisting an officer with violence, and disorderly intoxication. The police said that she was the primary aggressor during the encounter with other parties. Danielle was offered a plea deal that would downgrade her charge from resisting an officer with violence to resisting without violence. In exchange to a guilty plea, that reduction likely led to probation rather than jail term. She was sentenced to 1-year probation. Danielle, after staying with her husband for 15 years in marriage, decided to file for a petition in family court for a divorce from Michael. She described the marriage as an irretrievably broken. In the petition, she sought shared custody of the kids, money, and exclusive use of their home. She also asked the court to change her last name back to Drohan. Danielle's divorce petition was dismissed by the judge as the divorce papers were not properly served to Michael. On the 4th of February 2018, Michael Redlick called 911 to report a woman who posed a danger to herself and to others. Without providing more information, he told the operator that he would call back in 5 minutes, but Michael never made that second call. The woman was none other than his wife. On the 10th of January 2019, Michael came across flirty messages of his wife and another man. Infuriated, he reached for alcohol, got drunk, and angrily confronted Danielle. The fight was so alarming that their teenage daughter had to separate them. She grabbed a liquor bottle from Michael as Danielle left to stay elsewhere for the evening. The arguments went on until the following day. Michael went to work, then he stopped by a liquor store to collect alcohol at 4:42 p.m. He then went to his son's youth football game before returning home. That evening, Michael and Danielle had dropped their children to a friend's house for a sleepover, and they were left alone. Later, Danielle went to McDonald's to buy hamburger and returned around 10:30 p.m. Upon entering the house, she found her husband drunk. Danielle received a message from a man, and Michael took her phone and saw the message. There were a series of arguments after Michael found out she was communicating with another man. Later that night, Danielle was eating her hamburger in the kitchen. Michael went and grabbed her hamburger, took a bite out of it, and spit it at her. He then grabbed her, and she then fell on the ground. He then held her head down on the countertop, and he pushed his fist against her face. He was grinding his fist on her face. Danielle could not breathe, and she feared for her life. Using her free arm, she grabbed a knife from a drawer and stabbed him 1 time in the shoulder area. This attack allowed Danielle to break free of Michael. She ran into the toilet closet of the bathroom and locked the door. She did not have her phone with her. She simply remained there, and she was fearful. When she didn't hear anything, she came out of the bathroom. She followed the blood trail to the living room where she found Michael. At 9:28 a.m., she called 911 and said that her husband was deceased. She said that her husband was stiff and might have had a heart attack. Investigators asked Danielle if she found her in the morning. She said it actually happened last night. She went for a knife. He then grabbed the knife and stabbed himself. Police were dispatched to their home. When they arrived, they came across towels saturated in blood near Michael's body and near the stairs. There was a strong smell of bleach in the house. It looked like Michael's body was recently moved due to the smears of blood on the floor. A kitchen knife was found on the floor. It had blood on it. The police found Danielle dressed in all black with bandaged wrists and blood on her neck and feet. She was questioned, and she told the police several versions of what happened. An autopsy report concluded that Michael died of a stab wound to the left shoulder that sliced the large vein. Since Danielle was found with cuts on her wrists and she was also in a frantic state, she was taken to a psychiatric hospital. Police paid her a visit to try to piece together what occurred. When Danielle was released from the psychiatric ward, she returned home. Danielle was questioned by the investigators about what happened and why she contacted for help 11 hours later. That was the next morning. She claimed she started to perform CPR on Michael for a very long time. But she stopped and eventually collapsed from exhaustion. However, the investigators found no signs of vomiting, there was no indication of a heart attack, there were no signs of bruising, consistent with CPR, and his ribs were intact. Danielle claimed she did not immediately call for emergency assistance because she didn't know where her phone was. She was also afraid to call because she was also in probation and she was exhausted. After her CPR attempt, she lay down next to Michael's body, wondering what to do next, and claimed she slept until the following day. It was then that she called 911. Facts about what happened did not line up with Danielle's version of the events, and she was considered a prime suspect for murder. Blood samples collected by the investigators detected the presence of alcohol in her blood, which was a violation of her probation. Danielle was arrested on the 23rd of January and sent to Orange County Jail on the violation of probation charge. Detectives obtained a search warrant into Danielle's phone after they got inconsistencies in her story. They learned that she had opened a profile in a dating app and they accessed Danielle's account information. They discovered that while her dead husband laid on the floor, she opened a dating app and browsed it on the 12th of January at about 7:22 a.m. in the morning. They also found deleted texts on Danielle's phone, which she sent while Danielle lay dead on the kitchen floor. A month after Michael's death and comprehensive investigations, detectives obtained an arrest warrant for Danielle. She was arrested and charged with second-degree murder with a weapon and tampering with the evidence. She was put in Orange County Jail, where she spent about 3 years in custody. On the 21st of February 2022, prosecutors offered Danielle a plea deal. She could plead guilty for manslaughter in exchange for a sentence of 10 years. She had 1 week to agree. On February 28th, she turned the plea deal down and decided to go to trial. If found guilty of the second-degree murder, she faced a life sentence. The trial began on 9th of June 2022. Danielle's lawyer argued that her actions were dictated by self-defense and history of emotional and physical abuse. When she was asked by the prosecution why she lied during the emergency call and subsequent questioning, Danielle explained that she was afraid. She was concerned that no one would believe she had acted in self-defense. The prosecution also pointed out her statement on 911 call that Michael had had a heart attack, and her second explanation that he had stabbed himself during the fight, statements that were admittedly untrue, but Danielle excused her lies, saying that she was in a state of shock immediately after the stabbing, and she couldn't process her thoughts correctly. She told the court that she was scared and confused and didn't know what to say when she called 911. The prosecution called on Jaden, one of the couple's daughters, to testify. Jaden revealed that Danielle was not the victim at home, rather she was the instigator of the couple's fight. She further described Danielle as toxic and manipulative. On the 17th of July 2022, a jury of 6 men and 2 women found Danielle not guilty of second-degree murder, as they believed her actions were indeed in self-defense. However, she was found guilty of tampering with evidence. The investigators had proven that she had cleaned up the blood and moved Michael's body after his death. She received a 5-year suspended sentence, having already served 3 years. These were already credited to her.